objective morality and ethics, things are truly right and truly wrong, then God exists. Because He's the only conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity. Now the atheists and the humanists may argue and say, no, we have other foundations for our ethics and morality and our political ethics. I ask, what are they? Well, biology, in other words evolution, or social pressure. Well, let's take biology as an example. What does evolution say? Evolution says that we are accidental byproducts of a lengthy evolutionary process. What is accidents? And our morality has evolved just like your toenail, or your teeth, or your hair, or your nose. And this is why the late J.L. Mackie of Oxford University, one of the most influential atheists of our time, he says, if there are objective values, they make the existence of God more probable than it would have without them. So, can we say that evolution is an objective foundation or basis for morality? I would say no. Because if evolution is ever-changing, and our morality is pegged on these ever-changing biological states, then therefore our morality is changing too. So what does that mean? Does it make it objective? No, it makes it subjective, ephemeral, without any true meaning. Now someone may argue, but we're human beings. But that would be almost advocating a form of speciesism, the unjustified bias for a particular species. And also, when we look at the lion, and it goes and attacks the deer and rips its neck and drinks its blood, we don't say it's murder. We just say it's acting according to its instincts. We're just biology, we're just matter. That's why Richard Dawkins, and he's very brave for saying this, he says, there is no right and there is no wrong. There is no bad or good. Because what are we? We're just genetic robots. So that's not a basis for objective morality. Now someone may argue, what about social pressure? Well, that's even more dangerous, because if we even look at the concept of modernity, what does it mean in a crude sense? It basically means that our values are contingent on time. So what you believed in 30 years ago, it should change, because we're changing. It's going to change. So there's no true meaning with our values, or even our worldview. Similarly, if we were to take social pressure as an example, then how can we say that killing 6 million Jews was objectively morally wrong? Because social pressure in the 1940s says it was an okay thing to do. So there's huge implications that we cannot go down. This is why Richard Taylor, the famous ethicist, he says, the modern age, more or less, repudiating the idea of a divine lawgiver, has nevertheless tried to retain the ideas of moral right and moral wrong without noticing that in casting God aside, they have also abolished the meaningfulness of right and wrong as well. So, since we know things are objective in nature with regards to morality, then that necessitates the existence of God, because God is the only conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity. My fourth argument, it's economical in nature. I argue that Islam is timeless because its economic model deals with poverty and creates a financial stability better, I would argue, than the liberal economic model, which many of us know to be capitalism. And this is quite interesting. But there's a problem. We are people of conscience. Maybe many of us put our hands up and said we believe in objective morals. And I would argue that our ethics and morality dictates to us that we must be worried about the 3 billion or 2 people on the planet who are living in a dire state. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, my compassionate fellow human being? Of course we do. Now I would argue Islam has a positive say with regards to developing a financial environment or model to deal with these problems. Now, Islam has a very unique macroeconomy. What does it say? It says the vision is to remove the obstacles or the impediment of the distribution of wealth, because it sees as the distribution of wealth as the #1 economic problem. It is the #1 economic problem. And how does it do this? It does this in the following way. 1, individual needs are defined. I would argue Islam has the most rational geopolitical view, which is in a statement attributed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, human being has a right for food, shelter, and clothing. So the individual needs are defined. And what does that create? That creates a mentality of distribution. But in the capitalist model, in the liberal model, what does it say? There's too many needs, my friend. Not enough resources. So what do? We fight. What do? We compete. What do? Someone loses out. 3 million people, 2 billion people. There's a problem. And it's a geopolitical myth in my opinion, because many studies have been done in the contemporary period that have shown that our limited needs can easily be satisfied with the resources that we have times 6. We have 6 billion people on the planet. 6 times 6 is? Excellent. It's A grade. So, that's the first aspect. The second aspect is the Quranic injunction, which you know is part of the religious Islamic discourse, that we don't engage in interest-based activities. As the Quran says, God has permitted trade, but forbidden interest. And this is quite interesting, because interest is quite interesting. You didn't get that, no? Okay. Because interest restricts investment. It's an impediment to the distribution of wealth. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. If someone was to take interest out of the equation, it means there's more money in the hands of the individual. Yes? You're buying a car, there's no interest, you have more dollars. Yeah? This is fantastic. Now, how does this prevent the impediment to distribution of wealth? Because in Islamic banking, there's no interest, so you can't save it, it's not going to accumulate. Similarly, when you have that money, it's going to decrease because of the taxes every year. So what does that do? It's an economic stimulus for you to take that money and engage it back into society, to create entrepreneurship and businesses and build new roads or whatever the case may be. And for me, that's an amazing model. Third point, Islamic taxation aids the distribution of wealth. There's no income tax. It's only a 2.5% flat rate tax for Muslims, and even lower tax in many cases for non-Muslims. Now, if you compare this to the US, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, it concluded that the combined federal, state, and local government average tax rate for most workers is 40% of income. And this does not include indirect taxation. Fourth point, Islam also deals with the prevention of monopolies. It doesn't say this is free market. You have this huge economic jungle, do what you like. No, we have things like credit crunch. That's what happens when you do what you like. Actually, what Islam says is allow things to happen, but you have mechanisms in place to prevent monopolies. This is why the Quran says that the wealth does not become a commodity between the rich among you. Fifth point, natural resources are people's wealth. And that means there's more money in the hands of society. Now, take Saudi Arabia as an example, an oft-proclaimed Islamic state, which I totally disagree with, and we could have this debate later. If they followed the injunction of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, when he said, people are partners in 3 things: water, pastures, and fire, which means the natural resources. If Saudi Arabia followed this injunction, do you know some estimates say that every single Saudi citizen would earn $25 a year without working? Let's go Saudi, man. Joking, not many people are probably going to go there. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's an interesting injunction that actually provides more money in the hands of society, and it's not in the corporate elite, like we see in many of the states in the Arab world, and I do say the Western world. Now the 6th point. There's more stability in the Islamic economic model, in my opinion, because issuing money is a duty of the state. In Britain, for example, banks issue the money. And this is why Reginald McKenna, the one-time British Chancellor of the Exchequer, he says, I am afraid that the ordinary citizen will not like to be told that the banks or the Bank of England can create or destroy money. So what happens is that money is free-floating. It's not pegged on anything substantial like wealth. It's free-floating. And I would argue this creates instability, because you may have more money in society, but it doesn't mean you have more wealth. Now, gold and silver is the designated standard of currency for the Islamic economic model. So when you print money, which is the duty of only the state, it has to be banked with wealth, backed by wealth, through gold or silver. So this creates even more stability. This is why the economist Jay Shelton in Money Meltdown, in his publication Money Meltdown, he says, I see no escape from the conclusion inherent in the position of the advocates of gold, that only a convertible monetary system is sufficiently free of discretion to guarantee that it would achieve price stability. And we have